Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma. Victory to the Dharma nation. Evam Bhavatu. May it be so. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the latest livestream satsanga presented to you by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. As people who have been here for some time know, what we present every week is authentic, truly authentic Sanatana Dharma. That is the Vedic tradition presented as it is. That is, as it is actually taught in the Vedic scriptures by the rishis, by the great sages, yogis, acharyas, authentic gurus, etc. of this tradition, without speculation, without addition, without subtraction, without any sort of New Age admixture, without even the slightest trace of modernity whatsoever. What we present is Sanatana Dharma, the way that it has been presented by, again, all of these great individuals since time immemorial and eternally so. So what we do here is quite unique, and if this is what you're looking for, you're in the right place. So again, welcome to everyone. Before we start, just a few very quick things that I want to say. First of all, very soon, and what I mean by very soon, I can't tell you. Let's say within the next several weeks to a month at the most, we will be presenting our latest book. And this book is called Principles of Perfect Leadership. And I hope he doesn't mind me telling people this, but Nick has created a truly beautiful cover design for this book. I've seen it, I've reviewed it, and it is truly astounding. It's going to be one of the best covers for a book that we have had in some time. And again, this book will be out pretty soon. And it's a very unique book. It's a book of aphorisms. And all of the aphorisms talk about what it means to be a true and perfect leader. You know, you've heard me say this if you've followed my videos and especially my books for some time. You've heard me say this multiple times, that what we are missing today more than anything are real leaders, true leaders, good leaders, the likes of which we've seen historically, leaders of legend. We just have been missing for many, many, many generations now. And as a result, this is one of the main reasons why we have had all of the problems that we have had in our world. And I'm not going to give the long list. Anyone can. We know what the problems have been for generations now. And again, the reason why is because we've been lacking leaders. Well, this new book that is about to come out has one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to show in a straightforward, unadulterated, and authorized fashion what it means to be a leader and what it means to not be a leader. And indeed, if one is simply interested in this topic generally, or if you yourself are aspiring to be a true leader, that is, an individual who is a humble servant of their people, this is the book for you once this book comes out. This book is a manual for what it means to be a leader, how a leader acts, what a leader does, how a leader thinks, including extremely practical advice, actually. It's not simply very lofty philosophical ideas about leadership, but actually day-to-day practical advice. A leader should do this, they should avoid that, etc., etc. So again, many of us, myself and many of my students, are very excited that this new book is going to be coming out, Principles of Perfect Leadership. So that's the main news. We also have other book news as well, but first we'll let this book come out and then I'll tell you about the other book projects that will be happening. So with that, we're going to jump into the talk for today, and we're going to be speaking about who is a true Brahmana. Who or what is a true Brahmana? Before I dive into the talk itself and comment on this very beautiful verse from one of the Upanishads, let me just explain a little bit about what this term even actually means. As people know, I was just talking about leadership a moment ago. I was just talking about how, we're missing true leaders, organic leaders, etc. Well, a Brahmana is a leader, but very specifically, they are a leader very specifically in the spiritual realm. In all truly human society, i.e. Vedic society, there are two stratas of leadership. There are two leadership classes, one could say. One of these are the Brahmanas, the other are the Kshatriyas. The Brahmanas are the individuals who are the spiritual leaders of society. They are the individuals who teach. They are the individuals who, by their own personal example, they are examples, living, walking examples of what it means to have a sattvic lifestyle. That is a lifestyle that is wholly good and pure. They are individuals who sometimes even serve as judges in accordance with what society you're looking at, because in the ancient, truly ancient world, we found a Brahmana class really in every single civilized society. Well, these are individuals who, again, are, one could say, the priestly class. Then on the other hand, we have the Kshatriyas, who also are recognized as leaders. And the Kshatriyas are individuals who are warriors, who sometimes are royalty, who are administrators, etc. These are, one could say, the true politicians, not in the modern sense of parasitic individuals who are corrupt. That's not what a Kshatriya is. A Kshatriya is a true leader of the people, and someone who truly serves the people without need for recompense, without worrying about his own self-aggrandizement, etc. So these are the two leadership classes in any truly manusya, any truly human society. Now, this being the case, we have indeed spoken about these two leadership classes in the past. Indeed, if you look at our previous videos, I have talks in which I speak about Brahmanas, about Kshatriyas, etc. But truthfully, again, given what I was saying a short time ago, how we need to understand what it means to be a leader, we cannot really talk about these topics enough, about what it means to be a true Brahmana, what it means to be a true Kshatriya. So today we'll be focusing again on Brahmana, what it means to be a Brahmana. And we're going to be looking at a very, very, very nice verse, actually, from the Paramahamsa-Parivrajaka Upanishad. And this is verse 5 of that Upanishad. And this is a special verse in that, we know that with Upanishads, what are Upanishads for the most part? And in fact, not just Upanishads. We find this in many Vedic scriptures, many of the Puranas, etc. We certainly find this in Bhagavad Gita, which itself, interestingly, is classified as an Upanishad. Indeed, it's called the Gita Upanishad. What we find are conversations between, on the one hand, a truly sagely individual, an individual who knows truth, and truly knows truth, not just intellectually, but who lives truth, and that person having a conversation with someone else. And who that someone else is, that will vary from place to place. So this is what we find throughout the Upanishads, and here also with this verse that we'll be looking at, it is a conversation taking place, but between not just two anybody's, but rather two exalted beings. One of them actually is exalted, the other one is beyond exaltation. And these are Brahma, who is a demigod, who is essentially what in the Western world in antiquity is called the demiurge. That is the individual who is responsible for the material creation of one universe. That's Brahma. And he is asking a question to God. So again, this is what I meant by someone else who is not just exalted, but actually beyond even exaltation. So imagine this. I always think about this all the time, and I'm sorry to go on these little asides, but this is how my mind operates even when I don't share it as I'm giving a talk. How amazing would it be for any one of us as a living being to have a conversation with God? There was even a short series of books, silly New Age books called Conversations with God that came out maybe 20 years ago. But no, how truly astounding would it be to have truly a conversation with God? Not someone's fantasy of God, not just something some novelist, some New Age novelist kind of conjures up in their own mind of what they think God would say. But no, having quite literally the source of all reality there before you, and after having praised him and offered your obeisances at his feet, then with his permission, you can actually ask several questions. How amazing. Well, that's what we're about to encounter. It's quite literally a conversation with God. So I will first read this to everyone, and then we will go through it. And this is how this verse, this section actually of this Upanishad proceeds. How is one a Brahmana? Thus the god Brahma asked Lord Narayana. Lord Vishnu, another name for Narayana, then replied, O child, he who has knowledge of the Supreme Self is the possessor of the real sacred thread. His deep absorption in meditation, it is itself the shikha, that is the sacred tuft of hair of the Brahmana. This activity is itself the possession of the sanctifying ring of holy grass. He performs all true actions. He is the Brahmana. He is deeply absorbed in Brahman. He is the illumined being, i.e. a deva. He is the sage. He practices austerities. He is the noblest. He is superior to all. Know that he is a reflection of me. And there ends this section of Paramahamsa-Parivrajaka Upanishad. So very, very powerful section of this Upanishad. Quite beautiful, as so many of these verses are. But let's go through this verse a little bit in order to, again, truly understand what it means to be a Brahmana. First of all, before I even dive into this, let me state the obvious. And that is for any individuals who are out there who, as soon as you hear the term Brahmana, you very, very sadly, as a reflex action, tend to think of the caste system. Brahmanas have nothing to do with caste. We're not talking about something hereditary. We're not talking about something merely genetic. Rather, what we're talking about are the qualities of an individual. That is the psychophysical nature of an individual. This verse and bluntly many verses that we have spoken about in the past make that very, very clear. So we're not talking about a caste Brahmin. We're not talking about a person whose parents were so-called caste Brahmins, and even though that individual eats meat, drinks alcohol, smokes cigarettes, never meditates, never prays, never does a puja, etc., they have the audacity to nonetheless call themselves a Brahmin. That person is, I'll state it very charitably, barely possessed of Varna. That person is not a Brahmana, that is for sure. Because again, this verse, as is true for hundreds of verses throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures, make it clear what is a Brahmana. Indeed, that is the entire point of this. And this is not just anyone who is answering the question, this is God. So with that, let's go through this. First of all, how is one a Brahmana? This is Brahma asking, not just anyone, but Lord Narayana. Now let's see the reply. Oh child, let's stop there. 2 words. Let's stop there. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is because, sadly, within the last, roughly, at this point we might as well say almost 200 years. Really, it's been about 180 years, but really we could stretch it back academically, maybe around 200 years or so. In this modern concoction that we sometimes call Hinduism, which again is only 200 years old, which is very different from Sanatana Dharma, which existed previous to this. That is, when modernity and the ideas of modernity began to creep in to what was pure Sanatana Dharma, and it began to become altered, perverted, warped, etc., there creeped in many, many, many ideas, which now, interestingly, are accepted as foundational to Hinduism, but in actuality have nothing to do with the Vedic tradition. And this is one of these ideas, and that is that the gods are all interchangeable. The gods, the goddesses are all interchangeable. Pick whichever one you want, call it God, meditate on it. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. You'll all end up in the same place. This is what sadly many Hindus, maybe even a slight majority of Hindus, believe today. Again, this idea came about in the 19th century. This is a very modern idea. Nowhere in Sanatana Dharma is this actually taught, that the gods are all exactly the same, they're all interchangeable, they all just have different names for some mysterious reason, they have different attributes for some mysterious reason that we just don't understand, but they're all exactly the same. Well, with these two words alone, that entire idea is destroyed. O child, Lord Narayana is making it very clear that he is speaking to Brahma, who is the most powerful being within the material universe. But to Lord Narayana, he's just a child. He's just a child to be instructed. And why is this the case? Because Brahma, as great as he is, came into being at a certain point in history. Yes, billions of years ago, with a B. Billions of years ago. But he came into being. He himself has Narayana as his source. And more, Brahma will go out of being. This being the case, there is no position of equality between Brahma and Narayana. Narayana is the supreme being, Brahma is not. And the other devas and devis, as exalted as they are, and we offer our obeisances unto them, just like we would if we met a king, or a truly legitimate president or prime minister, etc. We would be respectful. But that person's not God. And it doesn't take all that much intelligence even to understand the distinction. That you can respect someone, you can even propitiate them. That doesn't make them God. That makes them powerful, but not all powerful. Well, here again, Lord Narayana himself is making this distinction in calling Brahma, O child, and then he goes on to explain who is a true Brahmana. And he says, he who has knowledge of the Supreme Self is the possessor of the real sacred thread. Now, for those who are, again, maybe not very conversant with Vedic culture and what it means to be a Brahmana, maybe you may not know what a sacred thread is. This is something that every Brahmana wears. I wear one. You can't see it because it's worn under the clothing. It has to be always touching the actual skin. So right now I'm wearing a Brahmana thread, and this is something that all Brahmanas wear. And it's symbolic of the fact that they are indeed a Brahmana, that they have been initiated as a Vedic priest. So what he is saying here is that that person who has knowledge of God, of the Supreme Self, Paramatman, of that Supreme Self, that person is the possessor of the real sacred thread. In other words, what is meant by a real sacred thread? Well, it goes back to what I was saying a short time ago. Today, in 2022, today, with the perversions of modernity, can you have individuals who they're wearing a sacred thread, just like a Brahmana would, but they are not a Brahmana? Well, of course. Indeed, sacred threads are not that difficult to get. You can sometimes go to some Vedic devotional stores and just buy them, and they won't even ask you, or are you a Brahmana? You can just buy them. So to actually just wear a thread, that's easy. But what Lord Narayana is saying here is that that person is truly wearing the sacred thread. In other words, wearing that sacred thread with honor, only if he is an individual who is in possession of knowledge of God, of the Supreme Self. So in other words, this is the prerequisite for what it means to be a Brahmana. Indeed, I gave a talk very long time ago at this point, I'm not sure, 8, 9 years ago at least, something like that, maybe more. Something to the effect of a true Brahmana knows Brahman, and Brahman meaning God. Indeed, this is the primary prerequisite for an individual to call themselves a Brahmana, a Vedic priest. They have to be someone who they possess knowledge of God. Now, to what extent? Oh, that can vary. You see, it doesn't mean that every Brahmana is an enlightened being necessarily. No, not necessarily, but they have to be someone whose knowledge is indeed steeped in an authentic understanding of what it means to be God. What is God? What is the nature of God, etc. And then all of the other important aspects of what it means to know God, what is the nature of God, the attributes of God, etc., etc. So this is the number one prerequisite, which I've always said, and which Lord Narayana here himself is saying. A true Brahmana knows Brahman, knows God. Now let's go a little bit deeper. His deep absorption in meditation is itself the shikha. Shikha. So very, very interesting. A shikha, and I don't have one now. Rather, I have a ponytail that pretty much extends from where it would be. But I used to have one when I was a full-time monk. I was with ISKCON. I had a shaved head, and I had a tuft of hair that came from the back of my head, from really what is the Sahasrara chakra. A lot of people don't know that, actually, that's the reason why you have it right there. The shikha is something that Brahmanas have. Indeed, when I took Brahmana initiation in 1986, that was the position and the appearance that I had, where I had a shaved head and shikha, this tuft of hair. So what Lord Vishnu here is saying is his deep absorption, that is the true Brahmana, in meditation is itself the shikha. In other words, again, like with the sacred thread, can anyone have that tuft of hair? Sure. Whoever you are, you can go to a barber and explain it, and he'll do that for you. You can do it yourself. But simply to have a thread, simply to have that tuft of hair, in and of itself does not make an individual a Brahmana. Rather, hear what is Lord Narayana saying. His deep absorption in meditation is the true shikha. So very interesting. With the first clause that was here, we're talking about knowledge. We're talking about basically philosophy, that is, knowledge of the Supreme Self. Now with the second clause, we're talking about practice. We're talking about meditation, because the two have to go together. You have to have philosophy and practice. Without philosophy, you don't know what you're doing or why. Without practice, your philosophy is just a shadow. It looks real, but it's not. There's no substance to it. So interestingly, with these two clauses, we have two very important elements of what it means to be a spiritual person and thus a Brahmana. And what it means to be a Brahmana is, again, you have knowledge of God, but also you are practicing. Practicing what? Piano? No. Practicing what? Practicing the only thing in this life that is of any true importance, and that is meditation. Meditation, meditation, meditation. So thus, this is how we know who a true Brahmana is that they indeed do meditation. Indeed, they're absorbed in meditation. I can talk much more deeply about that, but we'll go on because there's more to say with the rest of this verse. And we will continue. This activity is itself the possession of the sanctifying ring of holy grass. And we're not going to go very deeply into what is meant by holy grass because it's something that's quite esoteric. It's something that's used very specifically in yajna. And let me just leave it at that. It is an element of yajna that if you are Brahmana, you use holy grass, and indeed sometimes a ring, sometimes not a ring, in various ways. Indeed, as a yogi, you sit on kusha grass very specifically, but also you offer certain grasses as yajnas, etc. So this is what this is talking about when it talks about the ring of holy grass. But let's look at this sentence a little bit more. This activity itself is the possession of the sanctifying ring of holy grass. So again, like with anyone else, or like with any of these other examples that were given, is it possible for someone to collect holy grass? Anyone can, just like anyone can have a tuft of hair, just like anyone can buy a sacred thread and wear it, just like anyone can say, oh, I am a Brahmana. Don't you know? My parents were Brahmanas. Oh, I am a Brahmana. Anyone can say these things. Anyone can possess these things. But what Lord Vishnu is making very clear here is this activity, that is the two previous things that we just spoke about, that is having knowledge of God on the one hand, so again, philosophical understanding, but then also practice, that is absorbing oneself in meditation. This is what's meant by this activity. This activity is itself the possession of the sanctifying ring of holy grass. So again, it's not just the form, it's the substance. Again and again, with these last three sentences, we see this juxtaposition of form and substance, form and substance, form and substance. The thread is just form. All these things are form, but it's the substance that makes the individual a Brahmana. In the same way, the fact that both of one's parents are a Brahmana, that's form. That's good. It's better to have parents who are hopefully real Brahmanas than not. But that in and of itself is only form. It doesn't make you a Brahmana. Because the substance must be there, i.e., if you are someone who you were born in a family of Brahmanas, you must have knowledge of God. If you were born in a family of Brahmanas, despite that, you also have to do meditation. You have to live as a Brahmana. Very good. So let us go on to the next sentence. He, that is the true Brahmana, performs all true actions. All true actions. Now, this also is very important. This is actually a more important sentence than most people would think by just looking at it. Because actions are actions. A machine can perform actions. An animal can perform actions. All sorts of things can perform actions. But what's the difference between action versus true action? True action is action in which there is awareness, in which there is intent, in which that action is sattvic, in which that action is an action that brings about beneficial results to oneself and to all other beings. So thus, when the Brahmana is performing any sort of action, they are performing true action, an action which in itself is of the nature of creativity and sustenance. That is the true action of a Brahmana. So thus, that person, the true Brahmana, performs all true actions. So very, very powerful. Again, this is a short verse that someone could just look at and just kind of zoom right through it. But it is filled with very, very deep meaning. And then just to drive this home, who? Lord Narayana. Not Bob down the street with his YouTube channel. No. God himself says, he is the Brahmana. That person who he has just described. That is the true Brahmana. That individual whose actions are true. That individual who has knowledge of God and who is actually practicing, etc. That is the true Brahmana. And now he gives a qualifying statement, very important, crucial qualifying statement with this next sentence. He, that is the true Brahmana, is deeply absorbed in Brahman. And you've heard me say many times, Brahman is simply one of the names of God. It's a descriptor of God. So the true Brahmana knows Brahman. This is the nature of an individual who is a true priest. Not just that they know how to do ritual in an empty way, not just that they know how to recite mantras even from the Vedic scriptures for hours on end, but again in an empty way. No, what a true Brahmana is one who knows Brahman, one who knows God. And again, when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that that individual has perfect knowledge just yet. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily an enlightened being. It means that they are honest, they have integrity, and they are on the path, indeed, to have perfect knowledge and perfect experience. They may not be there yet, but still, that is their intent. That is their goal. They know Brahman, and they wish to know Brahman. But now this goes on. Lord Narayana does not stop there. He, that is the true Brahmana, is the illumined being. This means deva. This is translation of the word deva. Deva is a being of light. These are the gods. These are the gods and goddesses. And they're not the gods and goddesses of Hinduism. They are the gods and goddesses, period, of all people, of all true humans, regardless of any other sort of designation that you can apply to yourself. These are not Hindu gods and goddesses who are being spoken of. That's not what the devas or the devis are. These were the gods of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans and the ancient Chinese and the ancient Persians. These are the gods and goddesses of all of our ancestors, if you can classify yourself amongst true human beings. That's who the devas are. So how amazing that not just anyone, but Lord Vishnu himself, Lord Narayana, is saying that true Brahmana is a god. Now, that's an amazing statement. That's a powerful statement. And in what sense is this meant? Well, that he is an illumined being. That is, that he is a being who, when you are in his presence, you feel Dharma coming through. You feel the way of the natural order coming through that person. You feel the presence of God. You feel sacredness. You feel sattva, goodness, coming through that person. This is what is meant by that person is like a deva, that true Brahmana. But now let's go on. Another short sentence. He is the sage. That is again, true Brahmana, an individual who knows Brahman. That individual is a sage. That is, that they should aspire at all times to live as a sage does. And how do we know how a sage lives? Extremely easily. You read the Vedic scriptures, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures of what it means to be a sage. See, this is what is amazing, and this is just a little aside, but I feel very called to say this. Those individuals who are exploring spirituality in one way or another, and are doing it either sincerely or semi-sincerely, if the most important things in spirituality remain a mystery to you, then you need to actually begin to question your own sincerity. And this is the reason why. The answers are not missing. The answers are not a mystery. We sometimes, human beings, very flawed human beings, we wish for the true answers to be a mystery because then that takes the burden off of us. But the truth of the matter is the answers are there. You just refuse to look. And where are the answers? Very specifically, where we have the greatest access to them, the quickest access to them, very simply, the Vedic scriptures. When we go to the Vedic scriptures, very specifically, that's where we have the answers to all of our questions. So all of these really very fundamental questions, a million questions that can be asked. What is a true guru? Oh, gee, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. No, it's not. There are, again, hundreds of verses throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures that directly tell us, here are the qualities of a guru. A guru doesn't have these qualities, they're not a guru. There are also hundreds of stories where you see gurus in motion, in action. You see their characteristics. You see how they behave, etc. And the same thing with this. Who is a sage? Same answer. And what is the nature of God? Any philosophical, any deep, any important spiritual question that can be asked. This is what is truly amazing. They are all answered in the Vedic scriptures. And if a person claims to be semi-following Vedic spirituality and they have not found these answers yet, there's only one of two reasons why. Either A, despite all their blather, they haven't really read the Vedic scriptures, and that's the majority. Or, let's say, that with a caveat. They haven't read the Vedic scriptures because they're afraid to, because they know that they'll receive the answers that are there, and they don't really quite want the answers. So this is why I'm known for this, for saying this to people. You are a spiritual person, you claim to be a spiritual seeker, don't play games. You want to really know the truth? Don't play games. Don't pretend. Don't pretend that you can't find the answers. So therefore everything must remain a mystery. So therefore you feel you can make up the answers yourself and create your own brand new fake sampradaya, let's say. No. Don't play games. You want to know God? God is real. God is real. I can assure you God is real. You can know God. But you must open yourself to how God reveals himself. And how he reveals himself is through the Vedic scriptures. How he reveals himself is through those human beings who have perfected themselves and made themselves individuals who are via mediums through whom God is seen. God reflects himself through certain individuals who have surrendered unto him. And how also do you know God? Through your own meditative experience that you achieve through the guidance of the aforementioned individual, the Guru. This is how you know God. You truly want to know God? This is how. So, that was all just an aside that I just felt very called to say. With that, we're almost done with this. Let's go back. He, that is, the true Brahmana, practices austerities. The true Brahmana is that individual for whom austerities are truly meaningful. That is tapasya. That is doing things that are of difficulty, doing penances, etc., in order to purify himself. The Brahmana, the true Brahmana, is an individual who is truly practicing sattvic austerities. Not crazy austerities where you harm yourself, but rather sattvic. Let's go on. Arya. He is the noblest. That true Brahmana is an individual who is of the nature of nobility. He is an individual who is honest, has integrity, someone who does not break his vows, etc., etc. Look up what it means to be a noble individual. A noble individual is someone you can trust, someone you can put your trust in, someone who is loyal, someone who is good, etc. So that true Brahmana is an individual who is not just noble, the noblest, according to Lord Narayana. He is, and all the woke crowd will have conniptions about this, tough. He is superior to all. He is superior to all. That true Brahmana is someone who others must look up to with respect. And why? Because he's better. Why? Because he has more knowledge. Why? Because he has more austerity. He has more discipline. He has more humility, etc., etc. Because the innate qualities that are there within the Brahmana are pure. They are far and away beyond what the typical individual is capable of achieving without a lot of work. So this being the case, Lord Narayana makes this very clear. The true Brahmana is someone who is superior to all. Now, interestingly, having said that, of course, again, the stereotypical idea that people will then have is, well, that must mean that the Brahmana is an arrogant individual. Well, then he wouldn't be superior to all, would he? No, rather, this is the icing on the cake. He is also the most humble of all. He is also the individual who does not seek fame, who does not seek wealth, who does not seek all of the material acquisitions of this world. On the contrary, if you look historically, the Brahmanas, who were the individuals who qualitatively were the very best individuals of any given society, often lived in huts, in absolute simplicity. The kings lived in palaces. The merchants lived in mansions, etc., etc. The Brahmana, who was the head of society, they tended to live in a hut. They tended to live in complete humility. So indeed, for this reason and many reasons, he is superior to all. And then finally, Lord Narayana says this, know that he is a reflection of me. In other words, understand that, as I was saying a moment ago, when you look upon a true Brahmana, an individual who knows Brahman, you are looking at a via medium. You are looking at a transparent via medium. You are looking at an individual who, as I've said many times, is like a clear and clean window onto the spiritual world. And thus, when you look upon that person, you are seeing God reflected through that individual. And indeed, I've said this for years. I've written this. I wrote this in my PhD dissertation in graduate school, giving this example of the true sage, the true Brahmana, the true Rishi, the true Guru as an individual who is like a clean plane of glass, and you see through them to the other side. Well, here Lord Narayana himself is saying this, know that he is a reflection of me, and that when you look upon him, you also see God there. So thus, this is the nature of the true Brahmana. Now, all that being said, I'm going to end with just saying this. Very important. As is true for true leaders today, leaders with integrity, to find, again, individuals who call themselves Brahmanas, but who actually have integrity, who actually have all of these prerequisites that Lord Narayana himself is speaking about, is very difficult. To find a true guru is very difficult. To find a true fill in the blank, anything of vast importance, is difficult in 2022. Thus, this is why one of hundreds of projects that this movement is engaging in, the International Sanatana Dharma Society, not just any movement, but the International Sanatana Dharma Society, one thing that we are engaging in as one of our projects is indeed to revive this class of Brahmanas in its pristine form, with no excuses. So thus, I have initiated people as Brahmanas. I intend to initiate, ultimately, thousands of others as Brahmanas deep into the future for the next 50 years. And we even have a Brahmanical Order that is a part of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. One of my most trusted students, one of my closest students, is the head of this. So we are indeed doing something that needs to be done. We are reviving precisely what this verse is speaking about, what Lord Narayana himself is speaking of in this verse, and that is we are restoring truly what it means to be a Brahmana and more on the individual, personal level, but also as a cadre of individuals, as a powerful clergy of individuals who will represent Dharma perfectly in this world, extending into the future for the next 10,000 years. So thus, if an individual truly and sincerely and with humility wants to be a Brahmana, join the International Sanatana Dharma Society, because indeed the Brahminical priesthood is destined to be restored, and we are in the process of doing that. With that, I thank you very much for listening to my discourse, and we have a little bit of time left, so if there are any questions, please feel free. Now is the time to please feel free to ask your questions, and I'll answer as many as I can with the time that we have. Nice. Here's a very good related question from Varsaga. How does one read the scriptures properly when we aren't initiated yet? Very good. First of all, it's important to understand that reading the scriptures is an ongoing, lifelong process, and that being the case, it's important to begin, regardless of where you are, regardless if you're initiated, not initiated, regardless of your particular position in life, what you're doing, not doing, etc. If you sincerely want to know truth, if you sincerely want to understand the scriptures in a very both philosophical and practical way, then just begin to read the scriptures and try to gain as much guidance as you can. Certainly, once one is initiated, that certainly helps tremendously. Indeed, like with meditation, like with doing any sort of sadhana, like with acquiring wisdom, when reading the scriptures, when you actually have initiation, it definitely does help tremendously, because it helps to empower you to then understand the scriptures in a very deep sort of way. This doesn't mean, however, that you shouldn't begin to study the scriptures even before initiation. So I would encourage you, if you're not initiated, just begin reading immediately. Begin reading the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, etc., and try to gain as much guidance as you can. And what that means is that you seek association. So, of course, as many people know, we have, for example, a Discord server. It's the Dharma Nation Discord server. It's the Discord server that is the forum, one could say, the discussion forum of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And we have many, many wonderful devotees who are there, including many of my older students and disciples and people who are very knowledgeable, etc. So ask questions. Go on there or whatever other sorts of similar venues that you can. Ask questions of other individuals who have indeed themselves been initiated, who have read the scriptures very deeply, etc. So that's what I would suggest that you do. Hmm. Very good. And speaking of Nick, namaste. Here's a very good question from you. You ask, Namaste, Sri Acharyaji, universe, and that is the English word universe, is used to describe Brahma's creation, but isn't Brahmanda translated as a galaxy? There's been some talk about this on Discord. Can you clarify this for us, please? Yes, I can. And please keep in mind, I'm not an astronomer. I'm not an expert on astronomy in any way whatsoever. But this is a topic that I can answer absolutely authoritatively. Several things to be said. First of all, let's say, modern scientific, indeed, modern astronomical idea of what is meant by universe is something that's very different from what is meant by the term universe in the Vedic sense. And indeed, the first time that I revealed this, the first time that I publicly spoke about this was at least 10 years ago. And I was here in our temple room, and I explained this concept. And it's interesting, one of my disciples, he's not just a professor of physics, he was the chair of the physics department at University of Nebraska. So he's someone who does know astronomy as well as any human being can. And I described to him the Vedic concept, and after I finished, he was astounded. And he actually said to everyone who was here, including myself, that what I said made absolute sense, that the Vedic concept of universe is something that actually made complete sense to him and clarified questions that he had had in his mind for decades. And let me try to explain this as succinctly as I can, but at the same time so that people can understand. So again, the problem is not so much with the word universe itself. Indeed, even in the Vedic scriptures, yes, a Brahma creates a universe. The problem is what is meant by a universe. And indeed, the modern Western scientific notion of universe is different from the Vedic concept of universe in this sense, that when the modern scientist looks out in their telescope into this vast blackness and they see so many thousands and thousands of these clusters out there, and they don't quite understand what they are, they call the totality of what they're seeing, quote unquote, the universe. This is why you will hear them make such claims as, oh, the universe is practically infinite. They make it sound hopeless. If an individual wished to traverse from one end of the universe to the other, it would be impossible. Impossible for any spaceship, for any human, for any being whatsoever. The universe in the minds of modern scientists is so vast that it's inconceivable. Well, they've made a mistake, and this is where the mistake is. When they look out into the blackness of what they call space, what they're seeing is the realm of materiality itself. And what they call galaxies are in actuality the actual universes. And this is what I said to, again, my disciple who was the chair of the physics department. And he was astounded. And again, with his knowledge, he said, oh my God, this answers so many questions. I think after that, he probably ran home and started writing or something, started doing more research and writing God knows what to his colleagues. But in any case, yes, what we call galaxies are actually the universes. And the space in between is simply Prakriti itself, is simply materiality itself. So thus what we call the universe is actually the vast domain of materiality. And what modern scientists call the galaxies, those are the universes. So thus we are in a universe that in modern parlance is called the Milky Way. But it's actually not a galaxy, it's a universe. The Milky Way is a universe. And again, in my talk, I went much deeper, giving, I think, 5, 6, 7 evidences for why the galaxies are actually universes. I don't have time to go into that right now, but I hope that answers the question. So the galaxies, what we call galaxies, actually are the universes, and what we call the vastness of space is actually the vastness of the entire material sector, where there are an unlimited number of material universes. Very good. Very good. Here's a very nice question from Love Conqueror. And it is, Namaste Acharya. I offer my sincere obeisances to you, and likewise. Would you please explain the relationship between one's Svadharma and the goal of bhakti? Is achieving God consciousness our highest duty? Let me answer this in reverse order. First of all, indeed, achieving God consciousness is the highest duty of all living beings. Indeed, not just human beings, every living being, every blade of grass. The only distinction being that human beings actually have the capacity to follow through on that. But yes, this is the highest goal that every living being should be attempting to achieve, is to know God. Now, that being said, now let me get to the first part of what you ask here, in the relationship between one's Svadharma and the goal of bhakti. There is indeed a relationship between the two, and it is this. First of all, as far as Svadharma, for those who don't know what that term means, it means our own individual, let's say, dharma, our own essential nature, our own psychophysical nature, in accordance with who we are as an individual. And that includes our likes and dislikes, our predispositions, what our nature is like, how some people are more sattvic, some people are more tamasic. By extension, going outward, it also includes what we enjoy doing, what sort of career we wish to have, etc. So that dharma that is unique to ourselves, that which is explaining our own internal essential essence, etc., our innate essence. So that is what our Svadharma is. As far as its relationship with the goal of bhakti, indeed, Krishna speaks about this in the Bhagavad Gita itself, and that is that each of us having a Svadharma, regardless of what that Svadharma is and how it's manifest, as long as it is something that is indeed dharmic, that is indeed good, it can be devoted wholly and completely to God, to Sriman Narayana, with devotion, with the goal of achieving pure devotional consciousness. So this is why, indeed, how did we begin this entire talk? Talking about the Varnas, how there are some individuals who their Svadharma, one could say, but then by extension, their Varna, that is the actual, let's say, psychophysical class that they find themselves in. They may be a Brahmana. They may be an individual who they are very intellectually, philosophically oriented, very spiritual. Or they may be a Kshatriya, or they may be a Vaishya, a Shudra, etc. Regardless of this, wherever they find themselves as far as their Svadharma, their duties in life can be devoted to God in such a way that they achieve purification and eventually come to the point of achieving bhakti. So this is the nature of bhakti. Bhakti is devotion. Devotion is love. What does it mean to love? It means to be in relationship. What does it mean to be in relationship? It means exchange. That's relationship. There's no such thing as, I'm in a relationship. This is why you can't be in a relationship with an inanimate object. Oh, I'm in a relationship with my phone. No, I'm not. There's no exchange. I can communicate with my phone. I can have whatever feelings I want toward my phone, but it's not going to reciprocate. There is no reciprocation whatsoever. So this is why reciprocation is very, very important. So when it comes to the idea of bhakti, yes, this is indeed the goal. And the way that we achieve bhakti is that we take whatever is our natural Svadharma and we devote that to God with the idea of developing devotion. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Here's a good question, actually. And this may or may not be the last question that I'll take just due to time, but it is, Namaste Acharya-ji. How important is it to close our eyes during meditation? I find it a deeper experience to gaze upon images of Narayana on my altar as I chant and focus on the mantra vibrations. Very good. Well, let me say, there is no straightforward answer to this, and the reason why is because it depends on the type of sadhana that an individual is doing. It also depends on how advanced one is. But let me give the general answer. The general answer is that in the beginning stages of meditation, let me repeat that. In the beginning stages of meditation, and in my mind, that means the first 20 years. In the beginning stages of meditation, one should have their eyes completely closed, because that is the definition of meditation. The definition of meditation in and of itself, in accordance with the totality of the Vedic scriptures, the totality of the Upanishads, the totality of Bhagavad Gita, etc., is that meditation is one-pointed, focused awareness upon one object. Not two, not 17, one object. That is meditation, and there is no other definition. That being the case, this is why when one engages in dhyana proper, that is actual proper meditation, indeed your eyes are closed. Your eyes are closed, and it's not simply the eyes. The idea is that you are practicing pratyahara. You are withdrawing the senses. Instead of the senses going outward, they're now coming inward in such a way that the senses are stilled, and now you can focus all of your awareness on that one object of meditation. Now, this is what's interesting. And again, I'm talking about especially the early stages of meditation, i.e. the first roughly 20 years. One could be Asura's advocate and say, but is not the divine image of Narayana also something divine? So I'm listening to the mantra and I'm contemplating the image. Yes, that's true, but that's not meditation proper. The reason why this is the case is because indeed, even spiritually speaking, if we're trying to do several spiritual quote-unquote things at the same time, we're still not concentrating. Oh, I'm reciting mantra as I'm reading Bhagavad Gita. Really? Really? Well, is the Bhagavad Gita not sacred? Well, yes, but which are you concentrating on? You're concentrating imperfectly on both. So this is why one could say, oh, but it's the divine image, so I'm meditating on the divine image and I'm meditating on... You see, with that and, your attention is split. So even if we're talking about spiritual objects, it's not meditation proper. It's not actual dhyana. Indeed, what precedes dhyana is dharana, concentration. So thus, true meditation is we withdraw the senses. For that matter, let's go through Patanjali. Pratyahara, withdraw the senses. Dharana, concentration. Dhyana, meditation. In that way, in that order. So we withdraw the senses. What does that mean? Oh, yes, we close the eyes. Oh, yes, we're in a place where we're not hearing things that are distracting. Yes, we're in a place where we're not being hit in the head with a hammer. We're not feeling sensation. So thus, we know what a yogi does. They are still in a quiet place, sitting still, eyes closed, and focusing on one sacred object of meditation, and that is the name of God. So focus on the name of God, focus on the name of God as much as possible. That is actual meditation. As far as coming to the point where what you were describing, we can focus on the name of God while at the same time focusing also our awareness upon the divine murti, or for that matter, Paramatman himself. That is a very advanced stage. I've talked about this in the past, actually, where indeed this is the goal, but it takes a tremendous amount of practice, where it comes to the point where, indeed, I think it was either the last live stream or maybe the one before this where I actually spoke about this. It comes to the point where the divine name and the murti are one. But you can't artificially fake that. You can't artificially fake that. And indeed, if you try to focus on both at the same time, you'll find that really your concentration is split, even among two sacred objects. So this is why, focus on the name, focus on the name. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama. This is the procedure. This is the sadhana for the Kali Yuga, is Harinama. So this is what I would suggest to you. Now, if you've been meditating for 39 years and you've reached that stage, then please forgive any offense, and you're a very advanced meditator. Very good. With that, I don't think I can even take one more question, sadly, because we are at 8:01, so we're already a little bit past the hour. So once again, thank you all so much for being here. Please join us again next Monday. We do this every Monday where we have our Satsangha live stream. Please visit our website when you can, dharmacentral.com. And when our new book is available, which again should be within the next few weeks, month at the most, something like that, I'll let you know, and it will be available on Amazon. It will be available for purchase in all the usual places. It will also be on dharmacentral.com as well. So with that, thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Suravangsha Jayate. Om Tat Sat. Until the next time that we meet, everyone, namaste. Please, in every way, take very good care of yourselves.